with you, turn it to Genesis chapter 2. I'm going to be flicking through quite a few different passages this morning. They're going to come up on the screen as well. So if you'd rather just listen rather than having to kind of flick along with me, then you can just pay attention to the screen. Genesis chapter 2, the first couple of verses of Genesis chapter 2. So we're going right the way back to the creation story. So God in the 6 days is making everything in our world. Genesis chapter 2 says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he'd been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." So God has built into the very fabric of creation, the very rhythm of our world is Sabbath. It's buried right deep into the rhythm of creation. That's the first thing that I want us to look at this morning. It's part of creation's rhythm. On the seventh day, God finished the work he'd done and he rested. It's part of the very natural order of creation. 6 days for work, 1 day set aside for rest. And to not practice Sabbath then is to kind of intentionally be going against the flow of the very rhythm of creation that we are a part of. But if we're honest with ourselves, how often do we do that anyway? We come up with excuses, don't we, to allow us to be that busy. I'm a high performance kind of person. It's fine. I don't need a day off. I'll be all right. I can work a couple of weeks without a day off. Other people might need a rest because they're not as good as me, but hey, I'm fine. I'll be all right. I'll just keep going, power through. It's all good. Or, well, there's nobody else to do this. It's on my to-do list. It's my job. I've got to get it done. There's no one else. If nobody else is going to do it and step up, then I'll do it. That's fine. You know, or we say, well, if I just get this done, then I'll be able to rest. Just this little thing. But how often is there this little thing, and then there's that little thing, and then there's that one as well, and we never really get there to rest. But God rested. God has built into the rhythm of our lives as human beings and our world a pattern of rest. And if God, the infinite creator of our world, chooses to rest, how much more important is it for us as we're creatures? We're part of creation. We're not creators. We are part of creation. We are finite beings. He's infinite. How much more so important do you think it might be for us to rest? And I think it's no wonder then that things like hurry and busyness and stress and anxiety are rife in our world. Because they're like symptoms from going against the flow of creation. So much so that they're kind of normalized now. It's not a case of whether are you busy, it's how busy are you? How many times do you have a conversation with somebody in the opening lines? Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm good, just busy. Oh, that's all right, I like being busy, it's good. It's normalized to be busy. They're symptoms of going against the flow of creation itself. The philosopher H.H. Farmer says, I love this quote, it's really cool. When you go against the grain of the universe, you get splinters. These symptoms are splinters that we are living with in our bodies of going against the very flow of creation itself. Another helpful analogy, picture it like this. Imagine a battery, okay? Who here is this kind of person? There's a couple of kind of people, I think, in the world when it comes to devices and batteries. You're either the kind of person who likes to keep it topped up, keep it charged all the time, keep it in the green, don't ever dare let it go near the red. Like it's like always on charge, basically. Or there's other kinds of people who you kind of get like an adrenaline rush when you see like the 20% warning comes on, I've got ages. 10% comes on, and it's like, I've got ages. The 5, anybody ever had like the 5% warning? You're like, I'm on thin ice here. This is fun. I'm watching a film on YouTube, and like, it could die any second, you know? And I think we do that with our lives. So imagine the 100% mark, who's ever actually really charged their phone up to 100%? Like maybe if you leave it overnight, but otherwise it's like, I need it, I need to use it, whatever. But the 100% is like life in all of its fullness. That kind of John 10:10 thing that Jesus says. That's life in all of its fullness. But so often the reality is for us is we kind of let it go down, don't we? We let it go to 20%, 10%, and it's like our bodies start screaming. It's like, hey, I'm on 10% here. Like, plug me in, charge me back up. I'm going to die. But we kind of just keep it going. We ignore those warnings. And then there's only one reality at that point. We crash. We burn out. Maybe we get sick, we get signed off work, we have a duvet day, a pajama day, I can't face the world, I'm just going to wrap myself up, take a day, I'll be all right. I'll be okay after that. We binge out, maybe in digital stuff or physical stuff. We distract ourselves into oblivion to avoid the reality of having to face how we feel. We start going towards the negative coping mechanisms that help us to feel better, maybe in the short term, but long term they are damaging us. Does that sound familiar to anyone? And the reality is, if we do that, or even if we do listen to those warnings, we go, okay, 20%, it's Friday, I'm on my hands and knees making it to the weekend. I've made it. I'm somehow alive. And then we charge up to about 40%. 50%, maybe 60%. We just barely get our bodies back in the green again before we go off again. Because everything in our world is saying you need to get back to it. You've got to get back to work. You can't have more than like a day off. People will start questioning that. There's this to do. You've got to have this. You've got to do this. You've got to go there. You've got to be this person. You've got to look like this. You've got to enjoy that, do that. It's exhausting trying to live this way. No wonder why medical professionals have now started to diagnose a condition called hurry sickness. We're genuinely so busy, so hurried around in life that we've now got a medical condition for it because we're that busy. It's scary, isn't it? But it doesn't have to be that way. That's not the kind of life that God has designed us to live. And I love the invitation of Jesus. In Matthew 11, he says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Maybe for some of us this morning, even just hearing that is like, oh, I need that. How do I get that? I especially love the Message version of this. This is what it says in the Message version. It's a bit more down to earth. Are you tired? How many of us here are tired this morning? Maybe a few of us. Worn out? Burned out on religion? Anybody been in church long enough to be burned out on religion? Probably most of us. Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I love that. It's just so beautiful. It's so inviting. It's like, oh, I really want that. It's like it speaks to this part of us down here somewhere that is like crying out for that rest. We need rest. We need real rest. And it only comes from getting back into the rhythm of creation. Work for 6, rest for 1. A scary statistic, you probably know this anyway, but the average person gets roughly 6 hours of sleep every night. You might be sitting here and thinking, I would kill for 6 hours of sleep a night. Anybody here who has little children in your life? You're probably thinking 6 hours would be amazing. I would kill to get more than a couple at a time. Or maybe you're here and you're thinking, I'd do pretty good then. I get maybe more than 6. Maybe it's a, go me kind of moment. The average person gets about 6 hours of sleep a night, but the recommended medical average should be between 7 and 9 hours of sleep a night. So that's, we're talking like an hour or 2 at least every single day we're missing out on. Imagine what that starts to do to our bodies. That starts to drop that battery down and down and down, and we don't give ourselves enough time to be plugged back in and recharged. But I've got a positive stat for you as well. This is from a medical study in America. I'm afraid it's always America with these things, isn't it? But this is what they said, looking at people who started to observe the practice of Sabbath. It says, people who adhere to Sabbath keeping generally find benefits. Okay, good news. I like the sound of that. Participants who began observing Sabbath after non-observance as a baseline decreased their emotional exhaustion. This is good. I like the sound of this. Sabbath keeping was beneficially related to morality, well-being, mental health, spiritual health, technology addiction, there's something you probably didn't realize that you had, and relationship satisfaction. The beneficial possibilities of Sabbath outweigh, and I would probably argue far outweigh, the difficulties of creating Sabbath boundaries. How much does our world need some of that we're talking about there? I know I do. I need to slow down and to rest, to accept the reality that we are part of creation. We are creatures. We're not the creator. We are part of creation. And we could do well to get back in the rhythm of creation. How are we doing? You still with me? Still alive? Good. Okay, right. We're getting there. That's the really long one. Second one, Sabbath is a command. Helen mentioned this when she was sharing her story with us. It is a command. It's in the 10 Commandments. How often do we maybe glance over that? We just kind of go over it. Yeah, it's Sabbath. Take a day of rest. Yeah, cool. Whatever. Exodus chapter 20. So turn to the right a bit if you've got a Bible and you're going with me, or it's going to come up on the screen for us anyway. Exodus chapter 20. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that's in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. It's a command that's given to us as God's people. And an interesting fun fact is it's the only one of a whole host of spiritual disciplines that makes it into the 10 Commandments. There's no commandment to read your Bible. Thou shalt read their Bible 3 times a day. Thou shalt make sure they go to church on Sundays at least 3 times a month. There's none of that in there. Bible reading, fasting, prayer, church attendance, they're not in the list. But this one makes it into the list of the 10. I just find that quite interesting. And then skip ahead to Deuteronomy. So the people of Israel have had a fair bit of a journey by this point, and they're going back over the 10 Commandments. God's people, we're forgetful human beings, aren't we? So we kind of need it reminded to us. So here we go. Deuteronomy spells it back out, but with one interesting language change. It goes from remember the Sabbath day to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy as the Lord your God commanded you. And then it goes to the rest of what it says in Exodus. So there's one slight change there, but probably a quite important one. It's not just remember the Sabbath day in the same way that maybe you or I, we kind of remember it that, yeah, okay, I'll try to go on Sunday to church and worship and then try and take it easy Sunday afternoon if I can. But the reality is it's Monday tomorrow and there's jobs to do and so much stuff. I'll try and observe it, remember it if I can. But the observe it is like a different language. It changes the command a little bit. It's now something we are commanded to do. We are commanded to do Sabbath, to practice Sabbath, to plan for it, to look forward to it, to enjoy it while we're doing it. Imagine Christmas Day coming around every single week, 1 day a week. We've just had Christmas, haven't we? And whatever your plan, we make plans for like a whole month about what we're going to do and who we're going to see and all the food we're going to eat and all this kind of stuff. It's a bit like that. And it's not a command because God is some mean kid with a magnifying glass, as Bruce Almighty puts it, who loves to just give rules for us to follow. It's a command because he loves to give good gifts to his children. He knows that it's good for us, that we need it, and he loves to give us good gifts. John Mark Comer, in his book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, he puts it like this. I find it really interesting. He says, it's like commanding ice cream or live music or beach days. You think we'd be all chomping at the bit to practice Sabbath, but apparently there's something about the human condition that makes us want to hurry our way through life as fast as we possibly can, to rebel against the limitations of time itself. Due to our immaturity, dysfunction, and addiction, God has to command his people to do something deeply life-giving, to rest. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? It's like commanding us to enjoy Christmas, commanding us to enjoy stuff in life. Which leads me nicely on to my next point, which is that it was made for us. Sabbath was made for us. Mark chapter 2, Jesus is in one of his many kind of, verbal battles with the Pharisees and the religious leaders. And he says to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. It was made for us. Jesus is attacking the kind of legalistic, guilt-heavy culture that they have around the Sabbath. They built it into this list of do's and don'ts, a rule book of things that you can and can't do on the Sabbath. But they've lost the reality that Sabbath is a gift. It's an invitation to rest. And it's difficult because it goes against our world and our culture to go against the grain of stopping and resting, admitting that I need to slow down, admitting that I can't keep going at 100 miles an hour because I will burn out. We've kind of made work into this thing where, or rest into this thing. If you work really hard all week and you get the job done, maybe you'll get a day off. Maybe you can enjoy your weekend if you get all the work done. It's kind of like a reward for hard work rather than a gift. In ancient Jewish culture, they had it the other way around. They had it that Sabbath was a gift and it kind of preceded your work. It was the first day of your week, not the end of your week. It's kind of a little bit of a change for us to get our heads around to viewing it that way. Rich Villodas, a pastor and author in America, he says that Sabbath is not a reward for hard work. Sabbath is a gift that precedes work and enables us to work. So in this way, essentially, Sabbath is a way of us worshipping. We're changing the focus of it. It's not a reward because you've worked really hard all week, now you get to Sabbath. It's kind of, you need Sabbath, you've got to do it. Do it anyway. It's a gift and an invitation for us. And out of it, then we can work from the best place possible. Rather than working from a place of empty and drained out, we're working from a place of filled up, of peace and of joy and of rest. It's not about having everything finished so that we can stop and rest. It's about acknowledging that I can put that to one side. As Helen said, the world is going to keep spinning. Even though I stop, I can rest and then I can go again. Saying God is my priority. My primary goal in life is to worship God. That's what I was made for, not to work. As Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and your soul and your mind. That's the greatest commandment. That's our priority in life. That comes first. So Sabbath is kind of saying, I'm getting back into that, putting that as my priority. And then, out of that, love your neighbor as yourself. Then we work. Our work comes out of a place of rest. Because I don't know about you, I know for me it's nearly almost impossible for me to be a person of love and joy and peace when I'm knackered, when I'm exhausted, when I'm at 0%. I can't do that. It's really hard to do that when your battery is low. But when we charge it up to 100%, it's much easier. I know all of my worst times as a husband or as a friend or as a general human being come when I'm tired. When I get grouchy and tired and don't get enough sleep or I'm just exhausted, then I'm more irritable, I'm more quick-tempered, I'm more spiteful, I'm more selfish. I'm just not a good person to be around. But when I take time to rest, when I Sabbath, I come alive again. I become more joyful, more peaceful, more of an enjoyable person to be around, more selfless than selfish. It's the kind of person I was made to be.